I'm not completely proud of this, but it was true on a few occasions where I had to use, or I thought I had to use, the phrase, "Now, don't tell your mother about this," with our children. Now, I need to quickly say that this was not about something illegal or unethical or the like, but I'm just referring to those situations when the kids were growing up where I would suggest we do something that would be a little bit different than what would take place if their mother, my wife, had been present. You know, those moments at the grocery store where instead of broccoli, some other less healthy option made its way into the cart. Or ice cream was served at breakfast, or seating arrangements in the car were changed around for more convenience. Or when they were helping with a renovation project at home and some of the safety protocol was not adhered to in the correct way. Or when I was teaching them to drive and something came up. There were a few things over the years. I won't confess all of them to you. But you know those moments where it seemed easier to say, "Now don't tell your mother about this." Easier said than done. One of our now adult children could not keep this kind of secret. The other had a steel trap of control over saying anything, but it would always come out one way or another. Usually my wife would just look at me and say, while I tried to avoid any version of eye contact. Those stories still continue to come out, much to my embarrassment, even when all of the family is together now. Maybe you know about this kind of thing. Maybe you participated in it as a child, or as a parent, or a grandparent, or an aunt, or an uncle, or a godparent. Maybe you just plan to participate in it as soon as a certain child is old enough. But I'm pretty sure you know what I mean, or have heard of this in some other families. Now, don't tell your mother or your father or whoever is the other caregiver of the child, for of course there are all sorts and wonderful shapes of families. You don't have to hold up your hand if you have done this or plan to do this. Your secret is safe. The gospel passage for today seems to hold this same sort of sneakiness and hidden instruction and follow-through between a parent and two children. This is the parable of the two siblings who cannot tell the truth to the parent. You will remember that Jesus describes the situation where the parent comes to the first youngster and asks them to go and work in the vineyard, and the child replies that they will not, but later changes their mind and heads out to trim the vines, pick the grapes, or pull the weeds. The other child seems so good and willing and tells the parent that they will go out when asked and would get to work immediately, but then never shows up. We aren't told why. Jesus then asks, which one did the will of the parent? The first one, all those in attendance seem to offer. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. Which one did the will of the parent? One had the wrong words, but the right actions. One had the right words, but the wrong actions. Notice that it was the actions of the one child that was most important, not just their words. It was much more important what they did, how they acted, how they lived, how they loved, how they chose to spend their time, how they responded to their parents' will. What they did, what their actions revealed, was central here, to bring forth the kingdom or the realm of God. But notice something else as well, that both were beloved of the parent. For as Mother Liz reminded us last week, God's justice is different from what we might define as fair. Both were beloved of God the whole time. That part was never in question. Jesus used the parable to point out to the religious leaders of his day that it is not enough to say the right words and be filled with holy thought and holy encounter if it does not translate to actually going out and doing the work of the kingdom of the realm of God. It is not enough to be willing to say the correct things, of agreeing with all that God's hope for such things as like justice and peace and caring for the poor or the ignored or the alone or the forgotten or the abused. It is not enough to know all this by heart, but not be willing to get out and do what is required. It sounds so simple, but it was the actions of the two sons that was most important here, not their words. We are called to be people who respond with our lives and our hearts and our minds and our souls to God's purpose, and not simply know the words or the passages. The love of God, the forgiveness of God, the blessing of God surrounds us at all times. We're called to live that out. Dorothy Day once said, "What we would like to do is change the world. Make it a little simpler for people to feed, clothe, and shelter themselves as God intended them to do. And by fighting for better conditions, by crying out unceasingly for the rights of the workers, the poor, of the destitute, the rights of the worthy and the unworthy poor. In other words, we can, to a certain extent, change the world. We can work for the oasis, the little cell of joy and peace in a harried world. We can throw our pebble in the pond and be confident that its ever-widening circle will reach around the world. We repeat, there is nothing we can do but love." She says, "And dear God, please enlarge our hearts to love each other, to love our neighbor, to love our enemy as our friend." Ilia Delio writes this. She said, "We are born out of love and are created to live in love. How did we fall so far apart from one another, turning the possibility of friendship into animosity and opposition? Why have we built walls to separate us instead of bridges to unite us?" She said, "Then I thought to myself, you are infinitely near us, O God, within us, among us. Apart from you, we are random particles of matter struggling for existence. In you, who are the whole, the complete, we know ourselves to be whole, to be complete." She says, "When you are present, we are one, and we can pray in 1,000 different languages and feel at home together. But when we ignore you, reject you, suppress you, or turn you into an idol, we become scattered fragments of matter without meaningful life together. Only when we move toward one another do you emerge as the center of our lives." We are in this season of the church known as creation. We are examining how we live in response to the beauty and the wonder of this planet, and how we are interconnected to all people and all things. How are we to be in this world in response to God's gifts showered upon us? A parent had 2 children. One went to work in the vineyard and one did not. May we discover more about the work to which we are called in this world and at this time. Amen.